Hi, Sonya. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me today and be on the podcast. Could you just give a quick introduction to yourself as well as the topic we'll be talking about?
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me on. I'm Sonya. I recently graduated from Georgetown in 2022. Was in the college, studied economics, computer science, and then religion, ethics, and world affairs. And now I'm still living in the area, in fact, very close to Georgetown, and I'm working in DC, but excited to be here.
Awesome. So let's dive right in. What has life been like post graduation? Like, what's your routine? And yeah, just talk a bit about what your life is like right now.
It's been good. It's been simultaneously shockingly similar to being a student, but then also at the same time very different. Similarities are obviously still live in the Georgetown area, still see a lot of Georgetown students or Georgetown alum. So in some ways feel like I'm in the same community. So there's been a great constancy in that. Constancy is not a word, but
we understand what you're saying.
Yes, thank you. Just making up words. It's great. And then I think the biggest difference is it's a lot easier to build a solid routine where as a student, every single day is super different. Classes might be at different times, clubs are at different times, the weekends are always busy of social events, but then also somehow there's like a bunch of homework and then club events at the same time. But with work, that doesn't really happen as much. So work is isolated to Monday through Friday. There's some variations throughout the day, but for the most part, can wake up at a similar time, go to work at a similar time, leave at somewhat a similar time. And then all of the social activities concentrated on the weekends. So that's definitely been a nice transition where at least can predict the ebbs and flows of the days a little bit better, and things feel slightly more in my control rather than the power of the syllabus. But yeah, any other follow-up questions on like routines particularly or anything else?
I think we'll get into that
Okay.
a bit, but no, I think that was a great start. Yeah, so what is your daily routine like? Like, just break it down for us. What does a normal day look like?
Yeah, so for the weekdays, I'm one of those ridiculous people that likes to wake up very early in the morning.
Define early.
Right now it's aspirationally 5, has been slowly being pushed back to like 5:15, 5:30, and then wake up whenever I wake up. So go for a run usually, or if it's cold or I just want a rest day, then I'll usually cycle since I have one of those fun little work from home bikes in my house. And then if it's a work from office day, walk to work. It's about 2 miles, so a good 45-minute walk. Work, and then I'll usually commute home in the same way around like 6:30ish, just to readjust and be in a different environment before finishing out their workday from home. If it is a work from home day though, which right now is just Mondays, then I'll usually just take some extra time in the mornings to like read or journal before starting the workday, since the lack of sunlight living in a basement apartment can be a little painful sometimes. And then we'll try to take a walk to replace the commute later on in the day. But on Thursdays, I have the joy of dog sitting for a friend in Virginia. So get to bike down there instead, and then hang out with a beautiful little puppy for a good amount of time.
Yeah, awesome. And then on the weekends, like, what have they been like recently? Because I know weekends can like fluctuate a lot, but like, how have your weekends been recently? Like, what have you been up to?
Weekends have been good. One big transition that I've made since graduating is my weekends in the past were very, very packed, and they also stayed that way when I first graduated and just wanted to see a lot of different people and tried to have a lot of back-to-back events, whether it was meeting up with people or like larger social group events, whether it was like my start class at work or like people from old clubs that I was part of, or volunteering events. But recently I've decided that that's kind of exhausting. And I've set a new rule for myself of I'll only see one person a day, basically, which has been a pretty fun adjustment. So that helps not only to be a lot more present with the person that I'm with, and I'm not worried about the next thing that I'm going to run to and like have to check my watch all the time, or also just like if they're like the third person I've seen that day, it's just tiring and I feel like I'm not fully there for that person either. And it just has helped me mentally throughout the weekend and the week as well. Because one problem that I was running into when I first started working was work was so intense for the whole week. And then I realized I didn't recharge or rest at all over the weekend, because even though seeing people was fun, I just didn't have time to myself to like sleep or like have a break at all. So now the weekends are a lot more chill, so that's been good. Usually, again, one person a day, and try not to pack the weekends too much. Sundays are generally a little bit busier just because I have church, so usually get to church around 8:30, and then get to revisit the wonderful Leo Donovan Hall afterwards with Campus Outreach, which is always fun. Have had some random surprise encounters with people such as Sam, yourself, which is always fun, but also a little bit embarrassing every now and then.
Yeah, I saw Sonya, and then my first question to her was like, who do you think you are? Like, what do you think you're doing here?
It's great. What can I say? Leos has gotten better throughout the last year.
We love Leos.
We do love Leos. We love their hummus bar, love the vegan section. It's great.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think a lot of people both like in and out of college can relate to like having to recharge and find different ways to do that, especially from like a seeing people type of basis. I was curious, like, now that you said that the weekends are more chills, you could take breaks, like, what do those breaks look like? Like, how do you find ways to recharge? Like, sleep's obvious, but, like, what are the other ways you have found that really help yourself recharge?
Like you said, sleep is a huge one. Spending more time outside when the sun is up, because during the week when I'm running, the sun's not exactly up yet, which I actually really enjoy getting to see the sunrise every day, but it is also nice to be outside when the sun is shining, get some vitamin D, whether it's taking a long walk. Explored a lot of Tenleytown recently, or some random trails in Virginia, or sometimes taking a long bike ride, or just generally just trying to, like, I don't know, sit in a park, soak in the rays a little bit. Aside from that, really have revisited my previous joys of painting and bullet journaling, have picked that up again, but have kind of changed the way I've done it a little bit. But that's been a really good stress reliever to like dive back into old hobbies, adjusted for the postgraduate life. And then beyond that, aspirationally would still love to start a food blog. We'll see if that ever actually happens, but that's still been fun to explore different types of food, different ways of cooking, and I'm a very avid Yelp reviewer, so that's also been entertaining.
So TBD on the food blog.
TBD on that, but still just like exploring food,
right,
in general,
right,
is fun.
Of course. And I know, like, when I talk to people here, a lot of what I hear is, oh, like, would love to go outside more, like, would love to find places to go. So, like, what are your recs for people who might want to be like exploring a bit more? Like, where should they go?
Around Georgetown, or?
Yeah, maybe you can do like, well, people don't know this maybe, but Sonya is a very avid walker. She is what we call, she probably gets like a walker high, I assume, at some point. But girl can walk. So maybe like we do like a set of recommendations, like a bit more micro and then macro.
Okay. Well, the easiest recommendations within Georgetown are obviously the waterfront park. It's just nice to be next to the water. There's a lot of good restaurants in that area, or coffee shops. So basic, but an easy one. And then if you want to go a little bit further, Kennedy Center, down to the monuments, cross the bridge over to Arlington Cemetery. Lots of good, easy DC classic options over there. If you want a little bit more nature, I honestly have no idea what this park is called. I think it might be called Whitehurst, but intersection of 39th and T Street, there's this really sketchy looking gravel trail into the woods. If you can get past the sketchiness of it, it's really nice. It opens into a dog park too, and then just continues on. So that, if you love dogs / love nature, do recommend. It's a little cold right now, so you might not see some dogs, but once it gets warmer, they're just all running around everywhere. So that's really fun. And then Rose Park as well on the way to DuPont is good. And then if you are okay with spending a little bit of money, then Dumbarton Oaks is also really pretty. If you want to go beyond Georgetown a little bit, I really love the Capitol Crescent Trail, which goes up to, I believe, Bethesda, but starts basically at the Georgetown waterfront, if you were to turn left, you would head towards the Kennedy Center, but if you turn right, you start heading into Capitol Crescent Trail. That trail is really nice, pretty flat for the most part, great for runs, walks, whatever you're feeling. And then if you are willing to cross the bridge, then you can head to the Mount Vernon Trail. If you want a shorter, more naturey route, then just walk a little bit further on the Mount Vernon Trail to Teddy Roosevelt Island. Super nice. Or right before you get to the island, there's also this other like gravel trail underneath the bridge that's also kind of sketchy looking, but is great. And if you are looking for more of like a paved path / you want to run or bike, then just continue down Mount Vernon for however far you want to. It goes for like 30 miles. And also if you go, I believe it's like 7 miles down Mount Vernon, you can turn onto the 4 mile trail, run, whatever it's called, which goes further into like Old Town, Alexandria area, which is also really nice. Old Town is very similar to Georgetown in many ways. They have a waterfront. It's kind of old, as the name implies. So you have a lot of the like cute townhouses, nice little like coffee shops, restaurants. It's nice vibes if you're willing to go a little bit further and just like want to wander around a different waterfront. If you want to stay in the city, I have few recommendations, I'll be honest. Rock Creek Park is always great, but I don't really, the city's a little less exciting to me, I guess. If you find your way all the way at the Arboretum, that's great. But
you just happen to be in the area.
You just happen to, traverse the entire city. It's not that horribly long of a walk. You just might need to dedicate the whole day to it, but it's really nice if you make it there.
Right.
There's also a Facebook group called Girls Who Hike DC, which is...
You're a part of it?
I am, and it's people who just wander around DC.
So join it if you are interested.
Exactly.
Okay, amazing. A lot of wrecks there, so I think anyone who has any interest in walking or biking should be covered. But yeah, that was amazing. And that on that like larger theme of like recharging, how do you feel like it's changed from how you recharge in college compared to like post grad, if at all, or like how is it, how has it been modified?
I think I've just set better boundaries since graduating, and I think I've just recognized the importance of recharging a little bit more. I definitely did not acknowledge it as important throughout freshman through sophomore, junior-ish year. Did not prioritize like rest or sleeping or just any sort of recharging, whether it was physical, mental, emotional. And then junior year, A, the pandemic hit, and B, just like started realizing that was exhausting and not ideal for either my physical or my mental health, and started looking for outlets there. Obviously that was the pandemic, so couldn't do as much with people in person. So that's when the love of walking started, and then also started channeling interacting with people or like recharging through more virtual means. So that's when I started like streaming, for example. But then senior year, I think just being so deprived of people for such a long time, really tried to recharge by interacting with people as much as possible. So that's how I ended up with really packed weekends, which was really great for that time, and like really wanted to take full advantage of my senior year. But I'm also an introvert, and I don't think I really realized how exhausting that was until I graduated. It's like, I'm really grateful that I spent that time with people, and I'll never go back and change that, but I'm now realizing that that's just not sustainable for me now. So that's been the biggest transition. Like I mentioned, I'm going from super packed weekends to I'll just space it out, be fully present for each person, more like, I guess, quality over quantity now. And I think just prioritizing rest a lot more.
Right.
Also started realizing that like my brain shuts down at 10 p.m. and anyone wants to interact with me after that, sorry, my phone's in do not disturb. I won't get your notifications. It's just not happening.
Exactly. We love a seclusive queen.
We do.
And yeah, no, I think all of that is very valid. And I just wanted to ask, like, that transition from having those like packed weekends or just days and then going to what you said, like not measuring more quality or quantity spacing. like, what was that transition like? Was it a revelation you had like fairly quickly, or did it take a while? And then was it like a slow adjustment, or you were just like more like direct and like, okay, like starting from this week, like one person-ish a day? Like, just what were the different like aspects of this transition?
There was one weekend in September where it was shortly after like all the students came back to Georgetown, so I was just meeting up with a bunch of people, like whether it was students, and then I was also continuing earlier like hangouts with people from church or other people from work. So just super packed weekends for like 3 weeks in a row, like more packed than usual, and I just came out of that so exhausted. And for 2 weekends after that, I was like, I'm just clearing my schedules, not talking to anyone, can't handle this, like everything's just gonna be on my bed, be a little potato for a while, and then go outside, be a potato soaking up the sun. I don't know, that's also walking, but whatever. Just like trying not to talk to anyone. And I think that was the moment I was like, oh, I'm an introvert and this is not working. So basically like kind of cold turkey for 2 weeks, just didn't talk to anyone, and then tried to like then I don't know why, I was like, let's just go back to it. I've had this break, let's go back to intense weekends. 1 weekend later, it's like, this isn't working, have to stop. So it was a pretty abrupt transition after that, where I was like, okay, this is where I need to set a rule of, at that point I was like, maybe I'll like try to keep it like super tight. So it was like, okay, one person a weekend basically. It's like, I think I can do more than that. Also, just like scheduling wise, that just doesn't work super well. So one person a day, some flex there. Sometimes it's like one person in the morning, one person in the evening, or like I have a small group that meets on Saturday mornings, for example. But either way, a lot of buffer time at the very least. So really abrupt transition to more of a middle ground, I guess. Yeah.
No, that's really interesting, and I think that's like it's just really interesting to hear that. What made you want to like go back for that one weekend, like to pack? Like, was it just out of habit? Did you genuinely feel like you could do it again? Like, I'm just curious, like what made you like go back really quickly before kind of like leveling out?
It was a combination of both of those things, like habit of, oh, like there are all these people that I wanted to see, might as well just go back to doing what I was doing before, because it was obviously working in college, I thought. So I should be able to handle it, can go back to doing this. And then also just like kind of feeling bad about like, oh, these obligations that I kind of canceled for those 2 weekends and wanting to make up for it. So that's what led me to go back for that weekend. And then it just became so obvious that it wasn't going to work. And if I let myself get into that pattern again of always filling my weekends, it would be really hard to break out of it. So just had to make a hard stop at some point.
Right. No, for sure. And I'm curious, like, especially in the weeks leading up to this change, you talked about like not feeling like you could be present enough, especially as the days or a day wore on. Like, did anybody out of like good faith just like tell you like, hey, like you look exhausted, or like, oh, like, are you okay? Like, I was just curious, like, did anybody notice it, or did you feel like it was a lot more like in your head, like in your body, that it was happening?
I think it was a lot more internal. I don't know if anyone noticed. If anyone did, they didn't mention it to me. But I just felt a lot more distracted, I think, when I was with people, or just have to look at my phone more often. Like, for example, one thing that I always did during college was I don't like having my phone on me when I'm talking to someone, so I'll set a timer on it so I don't have to check the time, which is like great. It lets me be present for that time, but I didn't want to be in a point where I even had to set the timer, because that creates an expectation. It's like, oh, this is going to end really soon, or it's like, I just have such a high premium on my time that like, I'm glad I can spend this time with you, but like, you're not valuable enough for like unlimited time, I guess.
Yeah, no, I get that. But like, who wants to make anyone feel that way, right?
Yeah.
So no, that definitely makes sense. And the reason why I asked that question is because I feel like it depends how close you are to that person, whether you say something, because I have definitely been in that situation with people where I can tell that like they're distracted, or like they're clearly like stressed about something that they're not like letting on. And I think like there's a certain point if I don't know them well enough where it's like I don't want to come up as like rude or like judgy, but if I'm close enough to them, like, and I trust that they would take it in the right way, like I'll try to bring it up. So that's why I ask, because I just think it's like curious what everyone's like thoughts are on how to handle like that specific type of energy when you're with someone. But I guess I don't want to say like your friends don't care about you enough, because I realize now that might be how it sounds. But no, I just think it's interesting to see like how much of it's like internal, how much like you feel like you're dealing with it versus like how much is being perceived and like what is being presented.
Definitely.
So moving on from that, I was wondering, you talked about like realizing like you're an introvert or maybe like more introverted than you might have thought. Was there any point then in college where you felt like you were more extroverted, like extrovert leaning, or like did you always feel more introvert leaning? This was more just you stepping into that more post grad. Like where was that change?
Well, according to Myers-Briggs, I've always been an introvert.
Okay.
Apparently became less introverted in college. I was like 98% an introvert during high school, and then got to like 70 some odd percent during college, and I haven't taken it again since then, so who knows, maybe I'm back to 98%. But I think I've become a lot more extroverted, or just a lot more comfortable around people over the years. But I think also the pandemic, actually, I don't know. Did the pandemic make me more introverted or extroverted? It made me crave like being around people more, but also like less accustomed to being constantly around people at the same time. So it's like I want to be around people, but I'm more exhausted by people. So hard to say a little bit. But I think just work is also pretty tiring. And it's a lot of, at least I'm in consulting, so it's a lot of human interaction. And a lot of it's on Zoom too, which just somehow makes it a lot more tiring for me, even though, yes, I'm rejuvenated by in-person interactions, but somehow after a week long of being on Zoom, I just like don't want to interact with anyone, even if it is in person. So I think that's also a big factor too.
For sure. And I think this is always an important question to ask, but like what are the biggest misconceptions you have heard about introverts, and what is your response to them?
Interesting question. One is that they're antisocial. We're not. Still love you. Still love interacting with people. But it's just being an introvert versus being an extrovert is just more about where you get your energy from. And I still think of myself as a very social person, and I want to be able to spend time with people. But I also recognize that if I'm with people 24/7, I'm just not good company anymore. And I need time for myself, and also like I want to take that time to be a better person to be around for whoever I'm with later on. It's probably the biggest one. Yeah, I don't know, what are misconceptions that you have heard or have had of introverts?
Yes, and I definitely didn't mean to like put you on the spot. I just feel like generally introverts are like more misconstrued than extrovert leaning people, so just wanted to give the opportunity, empower my fellow humans.
Wow, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, but like along the similar lines, basically that like introverts are like antisocial. Like that's the biggest thing for sure. So I'm glad you hit on that, because like they're definitely not, and that like even like disregarding the fact that we're all a mix, so it's kind of like false labeling to identify yourself like just that way, because everyone's like on that spectrum anyways, like in my opinion. But yeah, I think being antisocial, like being quiet, like I think that's like a very potentially damaging narrative as well. Narratives are always so damaging, as we've learned at Georgetown.
As we've learned.
So damaging. But yeah, I know, I think those are the biggest ones. And like I personally am more extrovert leaning. I think honestly I low-key like suppressed that a bit more when I was younger, because well, like a variety of factors, but it just wasn't right vibes, right timing to like I think embrace it. But I think in college, through a lot of mistakes and like successes, I think I have felt a lot more like comfortable in that arena, instead of feeling like I'm a poser, I'm like not like representing myself truly. But I was curious then to like broaden that question. What do you think are the biggest misconceptions of post-grad life that people might have, if any at all? But I feel like there definitely should be some, right?
As a current student, what is your perception of post-grad life?
Okay, I'm a little biased because I like talk to you like relatively frequently, and like I have another good friend as well who's out of college. But to answer, I feel like a lot of work. My first conception. We're working in the workforce.
Well, maybe you're also talking to people who work a little bit more or have careers that.
Okay, fair. I think like maybe feeling a bit more scared because I guess for me like college is college, but I'll never have to be like, I don't know, like this seems a very unique time, like just these 4 years, and I guess the closest I have felt to like adulting was spring semester freshman year when I moved to Roslyn with a friend, like in an apartment, no real support from the university because they were still online. But yeah, I think like just feeling more scared, having to like pay bills, whatever that means. Probably like having some work friends, but like not a lot outside of work. I mean, like obviously you talk with a lot of people in work. Having a better routine, learning more about like what you like to eat cooking wise, which I'm really excited for. Hopefully that's not a misconception. Yep, those are a few. Okay, validate and validate.
Okay. For the most part, pretty accurate. You definitely do learn more about what you want to eat, cooking wise. Also build up the skills in cooking, so that's exciting. Work friends, I think it depends on the work culture that you're in. The place that I work, for example, really prioritizes having a really close-knit culture. A little bit unique because a lot of people there come from Georgetown, so then a lot of people try to like also interact with their Georgetown friends. But for other locations for this company, they tend to create a very, very close-knit starting class for each quote-unquote grade of people. So a lot of people's friends actually do end up being their work friends, so varies based on the company. And then the level of closeness that you have with those people also varies for sure, and it's up to personal preference. Like I would not say that work is not my primary circle of friends, so it depends on the person. And then other things, people definitely do work a lot during the weeks. Of course, depends on your career, and then in some ways kind of live for the weekends. I've heard that that's a pretty common perception of the work life, just because pretty solid routine for Monday through Friday, and then just like go wild on the weekends, or rest on the weekends. Also very important because that's something that people forget all the time. You need a day to recharge, as I've learned. Bills, yes. Terrifying. I don't know if it's a misconception or not, because I think the fear is kind of valid. But honestly, adulting is a lot more complicated in certain ways than I expected, at least. When I was about to graduate, I was like, I have interned in the past, I've lived on my own in the past, I am prepared, I am ready to be an adult. And then I realized that I don't know what a 401k is. I don't know how to deal with health insurance. So many random documents that, like, I don't know. You don't really have, like, I've heard of them, but they've just been like these mythical things that I'll worry about someday when I'm older. And then I was older. It's like, oh, I gotta worry about them now.